introduce
Okay.
you, and then we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, not afternoon yet. Thank you guys so much for coming. We really, really appreciate it. I think all of you would have got a copy of the notes, hopefully, when you walked in. And my name is Simone King. I'm the on-site health coordinator. You might have seen me around before. And I would like to thank all of you guys for coming. I would also like to thank our benefits manager, Jennifer Engel, for allowing us to do events like this that are wellness related. And stress management is something that we can all use in our lives, and it has such a huge impact on our health as well. You know, if you don't manage it correctly, it can raise your blood pressure and other physiological effects. So we really want to promote managing stress effectively. So without further ado, we have a wonderful speaker here, Saffron, and she's local to the area. Her office is on Vieira Boulevard in Morel. Yeah, so she's very close by. So if you could give her a warm welcome and she'll get started.
Good morning. I love your enthusiasm for good afternoon, though. I think that's wonderful. So I would like the person in this room who's never experienced stress to raise their hand. Anybody? No. Okay, so it's definitely something that we all experience, and I hope that you take back at least one or two things that you can use when you do experience stress with you today. The key thing that I want you to hear throughout the presentation is self-care, self-care, and self-care. There we go. I want to just share with you the objectives of our training. We're going to define what stress is and what the stress response looks like. I also want you to be able to recognize and identify your personal stress symptoms. In an environment like this where you're working with a lot of other people, it's also nice to understand what stress looks like in other people, because if you can come alongside them and encourage them to be aware that they might be experiencing some stress, that's definitely a beneficial thing to do. I want you to understand how our thoughts and actions can contribute to our stress response, and then be able to manage stress more effectively through the improved evaluation and self-care. So stress, who really knows what stress is? It's a very interesting thing, because when we hear the word stress, it has such a negative connotation. Stress isn't always necessarily bad. Back when there was the saber-toothed tiger, it was very important for that stress to kick in and you to be able to know, okay, I'm having a lot of stress and I need to have some kind of an adrenaline. Let me make sure what's beeping over here. So that could have been a little bit stressful for me, right? Hearing that little beeping. And what I'm trying to show is our stresses have changed. The stresses, there's no more saber-toothed tiger out there waiting to get us, but we have this constant influx of people trying to reach us, right? We also live in social network. Who's got Facebook account? Everybody's life looks really good on Facebook, doesn't it? Really? Do you think everybody lives like that? No, but we're sending a false image of ourselves, and then we're finding that we're having an epidemic of, does anybody know what our newest epidemic in Brevard County is? It's really sad, but it's suicide. We have a massive epidemic of suicide, and so it takes a village, and we need to maybe come alongside people, and when we see signs of it, be aware of what those signs are, educate us about those signs, and what's the best resource would you say in our county to use when we think someone might be suicidal or we're not even sure how to help someone? It's 211. And it's funny because I ran through and looked at all these things, and I was like, oh, I can give you this suicide hotline, I can give you this. But really, 211 is a 24-hour access that you can call and say, this is what's happening, please give me the appropriate resource. So, is stress always bad? No, not always. Sometimes we need to have a little bit of stress. I do want to let you know that a stressor is an event that creates a reaction, and you ever get like really hot or sweaty or feel like your palms are clammy, those are signals to you to know that stress might be occurring, and you have to practice self-care by being aware what is your body actually doing. So the stressors can be an external event, such as a conflict with another person, traffic, anybody just caught behind the guy in the left lane going slower than all the people in the right lane? That's definitely a stressor. It can also be an internal event, like illness. It can be fatigue. Self-care dictates that you get enough rest and that you get quality of rest. Okay? But you need to understand that there are internal stressors and that there are external stressors. Many events that are perceived as experiences as neutral or positive can also be stressful. Anybody ever had a wedding that they had to organize or a special surprise party? That's a really good, wonderful thing. But there's a reason there are shows like Bridezilla and stuff like that. The really good stressors can bring about some really detrimental things in people. I want you to understand that there are physical, emotional, and cognitive. So stress is going to affect you both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Who can give me some ideas of some physical symptoms of stress? Anyone? How about rapid heartbeat? Very good. How about headaches? Anybody have headaches? It's a key sign. Either A, you need to be hydrated, which if you're practicing self-care, you are hydrated, or headache. If you feel a little bit of tension, that's a stress. Anybody else? Physical symptom?
Sweating when you're not doing anything active. You just
All of a sudden you start sweating. Yes. Anybody else? How about some dry mouth? Breathing? Nobody wants to talk about this one. Diarrhea. That's a symptom. Tells you stomach cramps, a nervous stomach, sleeping difficulties. We've already touched on fatigue. Eating habit changes. You can go to where you don't want to eat, or all of a sudden you can kind of be binge eating. That's a sign that, hey, I might be having some stress and it's presenting physically. How about emotional? Who knows about some emotional stress? Yes. Is crying bad? Very good. No, it isn't. But yeah, you have anxiety, you could feel overwhelmed, you can feel irritable, you can feel frustrated, you can have a feeling of anger, and really there isn't really something that you should be angry about. That's a signal for you. You can have a loss of interest. Some people just loss of interest, something that you used to be very interested in, all of a sudden now means nothing to you. You can have numbness. And one thing you need to really watch out for in yourself and those around you is just that emotional withdrawal. Okay? How about cognitive symptoms? We all experience this because we're all working. What are some cognitive things that show? Yes, that's a great way of saying it. Difficulty, concentrating, and concentration at all. You know, you can be hyper-concentrated on one thing, and that's a way to avoid everything else, or difficulty paying attention. All of a sudden you're wondering, do you have ADD? And it wasn't there ever before. Obsessive thoughts, memory impairment. Now, it is perfectly natural to not remember where you put your keys. That's okay. But if you really just cannot remember why you walked in a room, what's happening, and it's continuing to happen, just think for yourself, you know what? This might be some stress that I'm experiencing. The contributors to the stress response are stressful thinking, thoughts that create a perpetual or stress situation. And one thing I'm going to talk to you about are personal beliefs that you have that ultimately lead to these ineffective behaviors because now you've stressed yourself out. You have a certain belief, it's creating a feeling in you, and now all of a sudden you're having this stress and you're not really identifying it as stress. So it's important to be able to realize what contributes to the stress response. And then stressful behaviors, behaviors that are spurred on by that stressful thinking. And it usually escalates an already stressful situation. Sometimes we can handle with just a little bit of stress, but when there are a lot of contributing factors, it can become overwhelming, and then all of a sudden it's just too much. There are a number of severity of stressors that determine our ability to cope. So when I said to you, oh, this situation you would normally be fine with, have you ever heard the saying, the straw that broke the camel's back? Yeah, and that's something that you might find happens to you in the workplace. So, stressful thinking. I love that you got this little handout. It's very, very effective because some people don't even know that they're having stressful thinking. Let's take a look at some of these, and I want you can just do it personally, or I can divide you up into groups of 3. Would you like to do group work, or would you like to do it by yourselves? Raise your hand if you want to do group work, if you want to break into groups. All right, I'm not gonna impose that on you. You do? You can come be in my group.
I will gladly do that.
But I want you to ask me questions. As I'm going along, if you have a question or you are not sure about something, go ahead and raise your hand. We have a small enough group that it can be interactive. Stop me, because if you have an interest in that, somebody else might be wanting to know that as well. So let's go ahead and look at this. First of all, there's filtering, okay? That's when you take all the negative details and you magnify them, and what are you doing? You're filtering all the positive out. You just have tunnel vision to just see the negative things that are happening. Polarized thinking. No one feels that they're guilty of this, but I want you to start watching this in yourself. It's that all or nothing, the good or the bad, the black or the white. Life really is different shades of gray, right? Not all black or all white. Try to watch yourself for this. You have to be perfect or it's a failure. Raise your hand if perfection is achievable. Anybody? And yet we spend so much of our life striving for it. That's a significant stressor. Overgeneralizing. This is where you take one single incident and you kind of apply that to everything, okay? That's not always the case. Just watch and be mindful if you are guilty of any of these. How about mind reading? Many of us were mind readers or fortune tellers. We probably wouldn't be working in this building, right? We'd probably be on a yacht in the Riviera somewhere because we'll be able to mind read. But without their saying so, you know what people are feeling and why they're acting the way. Have you ever looked at someone, you're like, I know what she's doing. I know that he's thinking that. Do any of us really know what anybody else is thinking? No. When you catch yourself doing that, I want you to say, so when did you become a mind reader, and why aren't you sitting on that yacht in the Riviera? That's an internal dialogue. Who knows who talks to you more than anybody else? Who's a person that talks to you more than anyone else on the planet? Yes, right. So you have to be aware of what it is you're telling yourself, because you can amplify your stress or you can reduce your stress based on what you're telling yourself in your mind. Yes, sir. Yes, but you know what's very interesting is some people will go to body language training and then they feel like they know exactly what someone's thinking about based on their body language. But no two people really are the same. If someone's sitting like this, some people feel that they're just closed off. We've been going to seminars that teach you that. That's not always the case. They could be cold. A lady could have forgot to wear her undergarments. They could be angry. They could be experiencing heartache. There's multiple reasons that someone sits like this. Some people are raised just, in an environment where this is just their relaxing mode. So I caution people who have gone to these workshops where they say, if someone's doing this, it means they're closed off and they're not listening to you. There are multiple reasons for that. So I agree with you, yes. Mind reading can be where we think we can read people's body language. Any other questions about that? For the ladies that just came in, we're on the stress management, and we are just right here at mind reading. Now, how about catastrophizing, where you expect a disaster? You notice you hear a problem, and you start with the what ifs. What ifs are not something that you could ever end. You could what if yourself to death. That's something that just can continue on and on and on. How about personalizing, where you think that everything you do or say is some kind of reaction? Everything that everybody does, it's being very egocentric. You're like, they must be reacting to this, they must be reacting to this. You ever seen someone trip on their way into something and the first thing they do is look around to see who's watching? I will tell you a truth about human beings. They're way more egocentric than you think. everybody's way involved with themselves. They're not spending as much time thinking about you as you think that they are. So that you can take that down a little bit, that personalization. How about, ooh, this is a good one, control fallacies. If you feel externally controlled, you're helpless and you feel like you're a victim of fate. And this is, when you see someone with this kind of stressful thinking, you can help them by encouraging and supporting them and helping them to know that they truly are the master of their destiny. And we're going to do a little locus of control diagram for you. How about the fallacy of fairness? Raise your hand if life is fair. You guys are in a very healthy place. You feel resentful because you think you know what is fair and right, but other people don't agree with you. Remember how I said it's very important to be aware of your belief systems? The things that you believe can bring about stressors. It's ultimately those things can lead to ineffective behavior. So you're in a work environment, someone comes and brings you more work, and you're like, that's not fair, I've already done my share today. You can get into a downward spiral of stress where like, it's not fair, I'm always getting more. Try to go back to this little sheet and see what it says. Stressful thinking. If you are allowing yourself to be part of stressful thinking, self-care can be rationalizing that away. Saying this is just stressful thinking, and as stressful thinking, it's probably I shouldn't be involved in it. I need to change the way that I'm thinking about that. Any questions about that? I love this one. The shoulds. We got blaming, but the shoulds. The shoulda, woulda, couldas. Who shoulda, woulda, couldas? I'm guilty. I'm putting my hand way up. I shoulda, woulda, coulda. I should have done this. I could have done that, or I would have. Hindsight is what? 2020. We can all see things that happen with all kinds of great clarity. That's a stressor. And then I just want to go down to being right, where you're continually trying to prove that you're right. Have you heard the saying, better to be at peace than be right? If you're right, keep it to yourself. If you're wrong, do the same, right? So it's important to understand, going back to perfection. Perfection is unachievable. And when we seek it out, we're going to just have more and more stressors. Now, stressful behaviors. Anybody have any questions so far? No? Again, I'm not going to break up into 3 groups and make you see and understand the stressful behavior you have. You all seem like very intelligent people, and you have all of this right here on your little handout. But if you turn your page over, we're looking at stress management, and the first one is stressful behavior, okay? Here I would like you to just take a minute for yourself and write down some of your examples, just for yourself, nobody else. This is only you're going to see it. If you need a pen, let me know. I'll run one around to you. But I want you just to write some examples of your behavior that you've seen in these kinds of situations. Does anybody need a pen? I'll bring you one. Now, I am a licensed mental health counselor, so I have to let you know, please don't divulge anything that you would feel uncomfortable with. It's totally fine if you don't talk at all. But when we look at stress management, it's one of those things that is very critical for us to be mindful of always. Let's just run through some of these stressful behaviors. Worrying about situations that you cannot control. Does anybody here ever not worry about things that they can't? You do? How do you do that? Oh, that's brilliant. So yield it to someone else. That's very liberating for you. Well done. Very good. How about failing to see choices or having that tunnel vision? Remember we talked about the tunnel vision a little bit earlier? Anybody find that they don't do that, or if they would like to share an example of it? I get a little bit of tunnel vision when we have to evacuate for hurricane, because once I waited too long and I sat on 95 going 7 miles an hour up the highway saying, why did I do this to myself? So I find myself getting tunnel vision then. But that's something that could happen in any kind of an environment where we get that tunnel vision. Oh, I'm good at this one. How about being a professional procrastinator? When you are procrastinating and that's not part of your personality or part of something that you typically do, I want you to see it as a warning sign, a little red flag. This is my sign for red flag, red flag. If you find that you are procrastinating, do some self-care and try to be aware of, are you experiencing more stress than normal? Procrastination is a very good example. Anybody ever let their mail pile up and not get to it because they just don't want to go there? That's definitely procrastination. But again, it's an indicator that there's other stuff going on in your life that you need to be mindful of and attend to. Would anybody like to share an example of expecting perfection of yourself and or others? I have 4 children. I've come to not expect perfection from myself, ever, but I still kind of hope for it in them. Isn't that, that's unhealthy. But again, if you're not a perfectionist and you're finding yourself getting really frustrated or potentially angry at yourself for not being more perfectionistic, that's a key that there might be some stress there. If you're feeling that way about other people, because we're always a little bit more hard on ourselves, if you see that you're frustrated in other people not being perfect, please see that as a red flag. Okay. How about resisting change through inflexibility or rigidity? Anyone want to share an example on that? We need to kind of bend or we'll break. And if we find that we're not bending, that's a red flag for stress. Turning all situations into competitions where someone has to win and someone has to lose. Life isn't black and white. Remember we talked about that kind of thinking? It's not one way or the other. How about focusing on faults rather than strengths? Or being self-critical. Sometimes we can be our own worst critic. And remember how I said that internal dialogue? You're the one talking to yourself more than anybody else is. Please be aware that that internal dialogue can be very detrimental or it can be very beneficial to you. Come on in. This is really good. Raise your hand if you're good at saying no without explanation. I need you to do this or this. You have to come to this. You are a very healthy individual. Good for you. It's important to be able to empower yourself to say no. If someone's asking you, it could be something really fun. Hey, we're all going to go and play bunco, or we're all going to meet for a drink at World of Beer, or we're going for a walk. Walking is really good for you. You should really come with us. It's totally within your rights to say no and not feel like you have to explain yourself away. Remember, you're practicing self-care. If you have trouble saying no, it's a red flag. All right, taking poor care of yourself, not getting enough sleep, having poor eating habits. if you stop exercising, if you're used to exercising and all of a sudden you stop and you're not doing that, red flag. And then drinking or smoking more when stressed. All right? I know that your employee assistance program can help you with all of those things. How about expecting all problems should be neatly resolved? Everything should be compartmentalized, happy, happy, joy, rainbows, lollipops, and unicorns. Do they exist? No, that's not going to happen. So what's the one behavior that you think you can start working on and changing right away? I want each of you to determine what that is. Just pick one. Pick one of these that you're going to be mindful of and that you're going to change right away, because if you leave here with just one positive change, then it's well worth your time sitting here through our presentation. I want to know, how will you do that? So here's a very critical part of change. You can decide to change, but if you don't decide how you're going to make the change, it's very challenging to implement it. So please pick one and to yourself make a little note. How are you going to actually do that? Does anybody want to share one thing they're going to change? Yes. Excellent. She's going to get more sleep. Who could use a little bit more sleep? Yay, all of us. And one thing that I would like to talk to you about is your sleep pattern. Very important part of stress reduction. A technique that I use with my patients is go take a shower right before you're going to sleep. Exercising before you go to sleep, not a really good idea. Watching a super stimulating movie, not a good idea. Having a physical, emotional fight with someone right before you go to sleep, not a good idea. Sir, did you ever suggest? Where you take on what their stressors are? That's very valid. Yes, sir.
I think that's number one, because that's where I feel that, I got, my daughter's getting married in September, I got graduation next week, and I also had a situation where I was playing with I still play basketball, older guys, and the competition, and I guess one of the big, I would say he's highly competitive, but I think I'm highly competitive. But he was very angry in how he responded to the situation. And we're barely talking now. Through no fault of my own. But the thing of it is that, I can't react to him the way he's acting. He'll come around or he won't. There's no sense in me worrying about it, because I've reached out several times.
You've done.
Yes.
However, being mindful of people that are important to us, and if they emotionally withdraw, it might be something that you might want to give a little bit extra effort. For some of the people that weren't here in the beginning, we did talk a lot about suicide just in the beginning, and I say it's an epidemic in Brevard County. I have 3 kids who graduated from Edgewood Junior Senior High, and we've had over 7 kids from Edgewood Junior Senior High commit suicide. That's an epidemic to me. That definitely is. And it's a very sad, tragic thing. And if you see someone withdrawing, I'm not saying that they're suicidal, but I'm saying if you see signs, do something about it. You don't want to ever be left with that feeling of, oh, I really could have done more, or I saw something there, or that person's behavior had a significant change from what they used to be like. So yes, you totally can release, but if it's not going to induce more stress, why not just reach out and say, hey, if there is something that I can do, please know I am here, for whatever it is. If I've done something to hurt or offend you, please know that wasn't my intention, and I want you to know. And remember that easy resource that's available 24/7, the 211. Why not just reach out and ask? Say, I've noticed this in someone. Does that fall in that category? I'm not asking you to memorize all of the signs of suicide. I'm not asking you to do that. but you have on your phone. You can just dial 211. It's completely anonymous. Hey, I'm wondering about suicide. Would this be something that might be something I should be aware of, and what can I do about it? And then they'll direct you in the way that you need to go. Yes. And we're all susceptible to what we call vicarious trauma. If we see things happening, even if it's not happening to us, it still has a way that it impacts us. And so we have to super be mindful of that. Remember the red flags. You guys can use that now for each other. You're in your own little elite red flag group because you know what this means. All right, so what can help you deal with stress? If you think about this for a little bit, and I would have put you in 3 different groups and have you finish discussing that, I would ask you, what can you do about stress, and discuss it amongst yourself. But I want you to figure out that once you realize what's creating stress, you have the opportunity to change it. You can adapt after the circumstance, even if you cannot always adapt during it. You must recognize when it has become too much for you and take action. Talk with a counselor or a close friend or a family member. It may help you to find other ways of managing stress, managing your stress by creating healthy situations. Does anybody have a vacation plan for 2020? I know this is very long-term thinking, but if you can start now creating a plan for 2020, when you're in that stress situation, you can say, oh, this feels like this and this, but I'm going to the Bahamas in 2020. What that does is take that little investment of doing some kind of a vacation, even if it's a staycation, and let you have something to look forward to. A gentleman here who has a wedding and a graduation, all kinds of stuff that you're pouring energy in for other stuff, plan a little staycation for a weekend in 2020. Have something that you're looking forward to. And then I'm going to get to the one thing we all love the most: exercise, right? Exercise. Getting enough exercise, which let's go ahead and quantify. What does enough mean? Okay? That means 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Doesn't matter if those days are 5 days in a row or if you skip in between, but you can really take the edge off. You might even find that you enjoy having this time just for yourself. You can break your 30 minutes into 10 minutes. So say you're working over here and you're allowed to have 3 10-minute breaks. During those 10 minutes, go up and down the stairs a few times. That counts as your 10 minutes of exercise. Walk around the building. If it's a nice day, you're getting your fresh air, you're doing some breathing, and lo and behold, you've got 30 minutes of exercise just like that. Okay, if you do that 5 days a week, doesn't seem that much, it really will take the edge off and help you with your stress. This, though, just so you know, is a maintenance dose of exercise. If you can do something that gets your heart rate up, that's even better. But we'll go with maintenance. You can always work up to it. To get enough sleep, you need to stick to your nighttime routine that works for you. Avoid the exercise before bed. Eliminate caffeine entirely after 2 o'clock. That's challenging to do because some people have their lull right at 2 or 3, and that's when they want their cup of coffee. That's just if you're having trouble sleeping. If you're good, don't worry about it. Carry on with your routine. I tell people, get in your shower and visualize. Visualize everything washing off you and going down the drain. You're going to bed fresh. You're not taking any of the day with you when you go to bed. So if you need to use a big lathery soap to do that, if you have to wash your hair, just while you're in the shower, visualize everything from the day washing off you, going down the drain, get your big comfy towel, and go straight to bed. All right? Anyone have questions about bedtime routines? No. Anybody wake up in the early morning and can't go back to sleep? Okay. Well, there's multiple things that you can do for that, because that can be creating a stressor in you, because you're like, well, if I fall asleep in 20 minutes, then I'll get 2 more hours, or wait, I have to be at work by this time. So that's using, remember how I said your brain sometimes can be really can be your enemy, but it can also be your greatest advocate. You can say to yourself, get up and do something. Get up and go do something, or you know what? If I do fall asleep or if I don't fall asleep, it's okay. I've had already this amount of time of good quality sleep. Don't just lie there in what we call ruminate. You don't want to just do something different, okay? If something doesn't work, do something different, because if something's not working and you keep doing it, red flag, all right? I want to have you please drink as much water as possible. You should ideally be drinking half of your body weight, right? So if you're not drinking enough water, anybody ever get, I feel a little bit thirsty? Anybody ever get that? You're already dehydrated. When you're getting that dry mouth, which we already know is a physiological indicator that you're stressed, you're already dehydrated. So you want to drink not for leisure or pleasure. You want to drink because it's what's right for your body. If we only put gas in our car when we felt like it, would the car still go? If we only put fuel in when we felt like pulling over? No. You need to have some kind of protein in your body you're going to hate me for this one, 3 to 6 hours. And people are like, what, are you kidding me? If you want your brain to function, it has to be hydrated, it has to be rested, and you have to have protein on board. Is there any way your car is going to run if it doesn't have oil? Not going to happen. You need to have protein in order for it to work. It's very important. Here's a great stress reducer. My favorite one is the bottom on that list. Raise your hand if you enjoy laughing. So healthy for you. So healthy for you. It really is a great, great way to reduce stress. So, how can you relax? In your little handout, you've got some really good ideas on how to relax. The one that I want to touch on with you today is deep breathing. They have the little systematic muscle relaxation. I can go through that with you, but I really believe that the breathing is going to be the most critical part. And I'm going to do what's called 4-7-8 breathing with you. If you've never heard of this before, it's one of the ones that I feel is most effective. And I think you'll find it too beneficial because you can do it anywhere and nobody needs to know that you're doing it. Please don't do it more than 4 times because it will make you a little bit lightheaded, okay? What you're going to do is breathe in through your nose with this kind of a sound initially so that you learn, okay? You want to fill up your lungs as much as you can. I'd like each of you to breathe in and fill up your lungs as much as you possibly think you can, because then I'm going to ask you to breathe in just a little bit more and realize that you're not using your entire lung capacity, okay? So everybody breathe in as much as you can. Fill up your lungs. Your lungs go from here to here. Use your diaphragm. Now, take in a little bit more air. See? We don't think that we can. We think it's in there. I want you to hold that for the count of 7, and then we're all going to breathe out to the count of 8. So we're breathing out now to the count of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. So the amount of time you're bringing the air in is half of the amount of time as you're breathing it out. And then can we all find that little fleshy piece of gum flesh behind our big teeth? You feel behind your 2 big teeth, there's that little kind of fleshy area there. Put the tip of your tongue on that little fleshy area, and you're going to keep it there for the whole exercise. We're going to do it just 2 more times. We're going to breathe in through your nose to the count of 4, as much oxygen as you can get in. 2, 3, 4. Now you're going to hold it for 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And now you're going to breathe out slowly to the count of 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The key part here is we're going to breathe in through our nose. We're going to breathe out through our mouth. Okay, so we're going to do it the last time. We're going to breathe into the count of 4 through the nose. Put your tongue on that fleshy piece behind your big teeth. Hold it for 7, and then breathe out through your mouth to the count of 8. It's 4-7-8 breathing. You can look it up on the internet, it's all over there, but it's evidence-based, it's been proven, it's physiologically sound, it's a great relaxer. It's like the body's natural Valium or Xanax. All right, everybody in through your nose to the count of 4. 2, 3, 4. We're going to hold for the count of 7. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to go out through the mouth with your tongue on that fleshy part. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Raise your hand if you feel a little bit more relaxed. Don't do it more than 4 times. You're going to get a little bit lightheaded. But see how you could do that anywhere at all, okay? So you have in here the other information, and I'm giving you all kinds of resources for other ways. Work strategies. 4 primary areas to improve your work life. Managing your time. The only way you can manage your time is to set realistic limits, okay? And then be assertive. A lot of people see assertive as having that negative connotation. Remember how I spoke to you earlier about being able to say no without having to give explanations? It's healthy to say no. If you're not saying no, red flag, okay? And then take responsibility. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does. We all do. It's important for you to be able to take responsibility because that's a stress reducer. To be able to say, oh, I made a mistake, I'm so sorry, I'll fix that right up. That's less stressful than being like, I'm not owning up to that. That just builds up in your chest and produces all kinds of physiological issues. All right? So I want you to be exceptionally mindful of that. Now I'm going to ask you I'm not going to ask you to fill this out. You can do this on your own time because I really, really, really want you to think about it. Think it through a little bit, write on this sheet, and then put it away for a few days. Bring it back out in a few days. Get as most as you can out of this workshop. Bring it out in a few days and then look at it again. But we're looking together at this little handout that you have. If you want to jot something down on it, you can, but I'm asking you, wait, think it through, and then look at it. So first we're going to look at the out of control. This is the outer area. It refers to those things that we have zero control over. What are things we have zero control over? Traffic, economy, the weather, other people. This is the biggest circle because it represents most of the things in our life, right? Then you go in a little bit to control. This represents the inner circle, and it represents the things that we actually have control over in our life, which in essence really is how we think, what we feel, and then how we behave. In other words, we only have control over how we act and react. Okay, reacting is a very key indicator of how you're dealing with stress management. So this is the smaller circle because it represents the smallest part of our lives. Okay, so we've got the outside of my control, then we've got the control. And then you see the little dash line? It's dashes because it does expand and contract based on our life circumstances, our situations. This represents the middle circle, and it's dotted to represent that it can either expand or contract. And it's examples of how we influence other people. We don't get to control them, but we can certainly influence them, right? Let's think about a teller at the bank who's a little bit frustrated and you're getting angry at her because she's not doing things as fast as you want her to. A tiny little bit of kindness is probably going to help her to go faster. If you're frustrated at her, she's going to get flustered and not be her best effective self. Same in our work environment. When you feel yourself being like, recognize you can only control what's in this little circle. You can't control outside or that little dash line. Generally speaking, we have little control over most things in our lives other than how we respond to them. But we can certainly have a profound influence on those things going on in our lives and how we respond to them. We can expand or shrink our influence circle by the choices that we make. At work, right here, we expand our influence by our behaviors, like being a team player, right? Helping out, being assertive in a kind way, being trustworthy and respecting others. Yet we can shrink that area by things like being constantly negative, blaming, not helping, gossiping. Has gossiping ever helped anybody? No, and it can be a real stressor because whoever you're gossiping to, when they walk away, they become stressed because they think, oh my goodness, I bet she's gossiping about me or he's gossiping about me when I'm not there. So that's creating a stressor, red flag, not keeping your word and disrespecting each other's. I want you to be mindful of your thought process when you use this worksheet. It's really actually very effective, and I give you permission to photocopy it so that you can help yourself with your stressors. Any questions about this, your locus of control? Now your balance wheel. All right, we want to ideally have this beautiful balance wheel where we have spirit, body, mind, emotional, and social all balanced. If we're really great at exercising and we're spending all of our time doing that, but we're not focusing on our emotions or our mind or our social, that's a balance wheel that's off balance. And if you ever had a wheel that's just off a little bit, does that thud, 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 thud sound? In order to have a smooth, healthy life and a stress-free, stress-reduced. I'm not promising anybody stress-free, I apologize, disclaimer here. But if everything is smooth, we're going to have a smoother ride through life. How about self-care strategies? And remember when I told you that's my key thing that I want to address here, self-care, self-care, self-care. Have an accountability partner for your self-care. Develop a wide variety of sources of gratification in your life. So if something falls off or something becomes detrimental in an area, you don't have all your eggs in one basket, okay? Consider taking a course in assertive training or life balancing training, and keep an active social network. I'm not asking you to stay active on Facebook. Let me just clarify, because that's not real life. But I do want you to have an active social network. Try to make one new friend every year or two. Some people are like, I have enough friends, I don't need more. But guess what? There's a lot of people out there that might need a friend. So try to see who's nobody else sitting with at lunch or who needs to have a little bit more of a support. Any questions about self-care strategies? Hydrate, sleep well, have protein. These are some additional readings that, if this is an area of interest for you, that you can find some benefit to. And I just want to ask each of you, what is one thing that you take away from the session today? I want to thank you so much for your attention, but would you mind sharing something that you take away from today? You're my go-to person. What's one thing you're taking away today?
What you said, we have control over how we act and how we
React.
So even though I know that, just hearing you say it today, just kind of.
It just is that little reminder that you are in control of how you act as well as how you react. And if you're not reacting in the way that you're used to, red flag, you might be experiencing some stressors and need to address those. Yes, in the back. 478, excellent breathing. I promise you this is something you can do anywhere. You can be in the 5 or 10 minimum item checkouts and there's a mom ahead of you with 90 items. Just do your 478. It's all good. It's all good. Anybody else, what they're taking away from? Yes. Yes. A lot of people don't want to say no because they don't want to. If you start with an explanation, then it's like you're making an excuse. Anybody not a grown-up here? Okay. It's okay to say no. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Exercise. And remember the maintenance exercise, 30 minutes a day, 5 times a week. It feels like it's a lot, but it really isn't, especially if you break it down into bite-sized pieces. If you can't do 10 minutes at a time, do 7 minutes at a time. A little bit of exercise is better than no exercise at all. Anybody else? The balance. It is. Absolutely, it's holistic. And if you find that you're not balanced, that there's too much focus on one side, remember that thump, thump, thumping. You're not going to be your best whole self. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? We're going to remember the 211. If you see someone's withdrawing or you see that there are any signs, educate yourself a little bit about suicide because it's happening right here. I've lived here for 25 years and I've never seen anything like what's happening now. So please be very mindful that we all need to be aware of other people's burdens and share the load a little bit. Did you have something, sir?
I have a lot of things.
Oh, go ahead. I have time.
I have a lot. I think it was really insightful that you shared about the suicides in Brevard County. That was one of the things, and young people for one, graduation and all those uncertainties. But adults have those similar
Absolutely.
anxiety things of the unknown. So that was good. I like that you said that the copy in reference to the control.
Your locus of
That was
control.
something that you said that we could utilize and take
Yes.
advantage of. And, just the opportunity to share your card. I can go
Yes.
on and on and on.
Wonderful.
I'll talk to you a little bit afterwards.
Okay,
but
great.
it's very, very informative. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Well, we have help available. I'm part of the Space Coast counselors, and a lot of us will be there. I leave my cell phone on my business card. It's my own agency, and I want my patients to be able to reach me, or if someone's in crisis, to be able to reach me. And I'm blessed. My children are all away at university, so I have the luxury to be able to minister to other people. You had something?
I did. You were talking about being aware of other people and if they're withdrawing.
Yes.
Kind of watching. Isn't that now kind of taking on somebody else's stress?
And that's a great question. So what she was asking, are you taking on someone else's stress for when you're being mindful of your neighbor or other people in your environment? Some people can see that as a stressor. I find that it's less of a stress than if something terrible happens to them and then for the rest of your life you wonder, what if? What if I had done something? So just dial that 211 number. You can leave a little anonymous note for someone. If you don't want to get too personally involved, you can say, hey, I see you're having a hard time. I just want you to know that there are people there for support. Please feel free to reach out and write some positive affirmation for them or something like that. If you don't want to personally do it, because it might create a little uncomfortableness for you, or it might add to your stress level, then you can do it in a roundabout way. Take my card, call me if there's something I can do to help. I'm very assertive. I'll call someone and say, hey, someone mentioned that you're having a rough time. Come on in for a free session and just talk through it from here. I'll come and meet you. Anybody else? No? We're in a good place. Well, thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules, and I really appreciate it. And you've got some excellent resources here, and you have resources on site. Thank you.